We're waiting for the go ahead from our AV folks that our audio issues are fixed. So we're in pause mode. Okay. All right. We're good to go. Okay, we're going to move ahead. So the last thing I want to mention before we jump into a message from our director, we want to recognize that we had an outgoing sport fish rep, Ben Allen, and we really appreciated his service and time with us. We usually have them join us for lunch, but he was unable to today. So we'll just mention that, yeah, we appreciate his service, and he worked with us for a couple of years on the council, and Blake Millett is now in his spot. So it's good to have you here, Blake, and we appreciate Ben's work with us. So with that, our director, Jay Shirley, has agreed to come and give us a quick welcome. And if you want to come up here and so the, I don't know, Al can see you.
Al can still get me.
Yep.
Yeah, but it's nice to be invited to the big table here. So, yeah, Jay Shirley, Director of the Division of Wildlife Resources. This is one of the most amazing things that we do. I'm going to put Eric on the spot a little bit here, but Eric, how many employees does the Division of Wildlife Resources have in our official habitat section? Or
so we have about 70 employees that are habitat employees around the state.
So how are we able to manage what this huge endeavor is across the state with habitat restoration and enhancement?
Well, it's a lot of work for our staff, and you know, our staff literally put in thousands of hours of time managing properties, managing projects, both on our properties and off, along with partners. So the other part of this is a substantial amount of partner participation, both financially and in-kind time and service to the division and to habitat and wildlife. You know, including federal agencies, NGOs, sportsmen's groups. We just appreciate them all and all of the efforts. A lot of dedicated hunter work goes on habitat projects. A lot of our main constituents come and help us out because they are all passionate about wildlife.
Thank you. That is exactly what I wanted to focus on today, is our habitat section of 70 some odd employees, extremely, just like many of our sections, extremely probably overworked in a lot of aspects, trying to keep up. And there is no way possible for us to do this work at an effective scale without the partnerships that we have. And that includes everyone that's participating on Habitat Council, everyone that's involved with us on a day-to-day, just promoting what we do. Habitat is such, I mean, it's the key component of what we're trying to do to protect our resources moving forward. There's a lot of conversations that we have about this and that. In the end, it boils down to that habitat protection, and our habitat section does a really good job at integrating themselves into everything that the agency does. Everything from, I mean, even with our law enforcement section on our WMAs, man, what a challenge that has I don't want to say started to become, because it's been there for a while, but that workload continues to increase. Everything that we do, we have great support and great programs in place for getting this work done, but it takes all of us. And I just want to echo the appreciation for the time that we ask and the appreciation of the well thought out. We want to be good listeners. We want to be a good partner in all of this. I do have one trivia question. So every sportsman in this state that buys a license contributes to our wildlife habitat account. Here's the trivia question. What percentage, or what is the, off of a one-day fishing license, how much of that revenue goes into that wildlife habitat account? Does anyone know? I mean, I would give a prize if I had one. I don't. I already gave them away. It's 50 cents off a one-day fishing license. How many of those did we sell in the last year?
Not sure on that.
I think the answer is 0. We got rid of a one.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So there is
That's right.
$0 going into that wildlife habitat account from a one-day fishing license. But if you buy a 3-day fishing license, I think that amount is $3.50, regardless from there on up. So anyway, that's the trivia for today. But
And we
again,
sell lots of those 3-day licenses.
yes, we do.
Lots
And I
of
don't
those.
know the number there. I just know it's 0 on the. Sell that. Anyway, I really did just want to express my appreciation for this process, the work that you do. I look forward to seeing the final list for approval and being able to answer. And I trust this process. And just again, I'm grateful to be here, and hopefully I'll be able to come back in and visit off and on during the day. So thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, one last thing I did want to mention, on the habitat front, we continue to get pushed and asked about big game enhancements, specifically to mule deer. And we challenged our habitat section and our wildlife section. We always get questioned, and we have said oftentimes in the agency that we're doing everything we can for deer and trying to promote that habitat type. And we really had to think about that. Are we doing everything we can for deer on the habitat front? And we tasked Eric and Kobe and all those employees involved to get together and think outside the box and to really focus on things that, crazy ideas, if you will, or things that we used to do or that we have an option to do that we really haven't explored. It continues to be a big push. It's a big push of the dollars that go into that wildlife habitat account. It's a big push for us to be concentrating on. So I did just want to mention that as well. And I'm not trying to take away from any of the other super important aspects that we do, but it is one of those things that we continue to answer to. And I just want this council to know that we have come up with a list of ideas and strategies that we're looking at in increase and improve on that aspect as well. So thank you for your time.
Yeah, thanks, Jay. Maybe just one thing I'll add to what Jay said is that the money that we consider for projects here in this group has some of the longest lasting difference to wildlife in the state. Habitat improvements and restoration, the work that happens will have a benefit to wildlife for decades to come. This is important. It's fulfilling work for us, and we recognize that. And so thanks, Jay, for helping us out. All right. Okay. Next item on our agenda is we're going to review the Habitat Council handbook. So Danny Summers is here. You're going to do that. We'll let him have the stage.
Daniel's going to help out where I forget things or whatever as well. But thankful to have everybody here and get our council together again. And we usually start out every year with a quick reminder of how and why we're here, and we've got a new member to help them understand the kind of the sideboards of Habitat Council and how it's created and what we can do here. So Daniel sent this handbook out. If anybody needs a copy, we can get it to you as well. But this kind of is the summary from the legislation and what we do here with Habitat Council. So it started in 1995. The legislature created the Wildlife Habitat Account, which comes from a portion of the license fees and CUR fees that the division sells, and that money is deposited into an account and used. Basically, the main purposes that we can use this money for is the enhancement, preservation, management, acquisition, and protection of fish and wildlife habitat, as well as improving access for hunting and fishing. And so as we review projects over the next 4 months. Basically, those are the sideboards that is, if one of these projects that we're reviewing doesn't fit one of those things, then it might not be appropriate for this body. But a lot of what we do as an administration in the habitat section with Daniel, and Tyler, and Alison, and myself is trying to find ways to fund a lot of the great projects they're doing. And this isn't the only way, but it's one of the big ways we have to fund projects. So on the handbook here, we go a little bit more specifically on what can be done. The first bullet, number one is kind of waterfowl, development, restoration, and preservation of wetlands. Then for upland game, controlling predators, develop habitat, acquire habitat, implement habitat education and systems programs. It's not one that we've done a lot of, at least in recent years. Provide public access to private lands, implement upland game, transplant, and reproduction programs. And there's for aquatic habitats, again, it's acquisition, preservation, management of aquatic and terrestrial habitats, which includes both big game and sport fish. And then providing access. So that's a lot of one of the questions that we have is in some of the projects, is there access, and is how the public benefiting from the project? Some of the purposes of the council are to provide recommendations to the division regarding these monies, making sure that we're putting these monies to the best use possible. Identify the most effective methods of protecting, preserving, and enhancing habitats. We want your feedback, input on that. Recommend the most appropriate means for providing access for hunting and fishing. We want to maximize our revenue with partnerships, and that's a lot of what we do through the Watershed Restoration Initiative and other partnerships. We're also tasked to review habitat management plans for our division lands. We have one here coming up today, and that's an important part of what we do is getting feedback on how we're managing our lands. You want to encourage biological diversity and ecosystem-based management. And we also do review some external conservation permit projects as well that are funded through ECP, but kind of as a peer review process to make sure that we're doing good things with those funds as well. So Habitat Council membership, we have 8 members, 4 citizens representing sportsman interests, and then 4 DNR employees. So we spent through the introductions on that. So citizens serve 2-year terms with possible extension of another 2 years. Our meetings follow Robert's Rules of Order. Eric is the Habitat Section Chief, is the chair of the Habitat Council, and the only votes to break a tie. We have we need 5 members to constitute a quorum, and a quorum is required for all Habitat Council actions. So, and then our meetings are open to the public, and we must comply with the Open and Public Meetings Act, which is also included in this document. Allocation of funds. Dan, you don't want to talk about that, like the changes we had this last session.
So yeah, the way the funding kind of works, and we'll talk a little bit more about this as Alison brings up the spreadsheet, but just a quick introduction. By code, each year for waterfowl, 70,000 or 10% of that revenue is deposited into that account. It's the same for upland, 230,000 or 10% of the annual revenue. And then the remainder amount for big game and aquatics gets essentially split by the percentage of revenue that each of those funding sources bring in.
So our proposal review, all proposals were just submitted. The deadline was a couple of weeks ago here in January. So this is all part of the Watershed Restoration Initiative timeline, and we've merged these 2 programs together to maximize their effectiveness. Under rare circumstances, sometimes those deadlines can be waived, but all of these projects were submitted by our partners, by our own biologists here about 2 weeks ago. like I said, yeah, all these, or many of these will be, they're all available for review on our database. Daniel sent out some, if you're new to that database, some helps on how to do that. If you have any questions on how to navigate the database, please let us know. We're happy to help you out. So typically, we do our process here starts today and goes through April. So we'll have a meeting today with kind of a focus on division lands and how we manage our land and other projects like guzzlers and some other things today. And then our next meeting is the upland game and waterfowl meeting, and that'll be in February. Then in March is our aquatic sport fish meeting. We also half the day we'll meet with the Blue Ribbons Fishery Council as well to look review joint proposals from both those programs. And our final proposal meeting will be in April. We'll be focused on big game, and then usually a couple weeks after that meeting in April, we'll have a final budget meeting, kind of as a half-day meeting of deciding, making the decisions on where the money's going to go, or what our recommendation may be for the director, as the director makes the final approval on that. So we want to have our recommendations about by April 30th. And then these are all projects that will start on July 1st. We're reviewing projects for fiscal year 25, which starts on July 1st. Anything else I missed on that, Daniel?
I think so.
Okay. We'll talk about a lot of other funding sources that get put into these projects. If you ever have questions about these different funding sources, let us know. We use, just quickly summarize some of these. We have federal aid, or Pittman Robertson dollars, come from federal tax on hunting goods, ammunition, guns, things like that. That the division has a large source of that, and we're able to put some of that funding into these projects. We also, another source is the Dingle Johnson. I don't think that money's spoken for, so it doesn't really go to habitat projects, but that's one of the fisheries funds that they use, kind of a similar to PR. The wildlife restricted account is the funding that is generated from licenses, and this habitat account is a portion of that that's set aside just for habitat. But general funds are our general tax dollars from the state. We have the division uses some of those. Those go mostly for districts in the division that we don't sell anything for. The state needs the funds, so those funds don't come here to the habitat account. But we often have many cooperative agreements with our partners, with other nonprofits, other federal agencies. That's one of the big parts of the watershed restoration initiative is leveraging all the funding from lots of different partners. And so WRI funding, Tyler, do you want to mention your sources there?
So the Watershed Restoration Initiative is about a 20-year-old program that funds about 100 different projects a year, and we get just over $6 million of funding from the legislature each year. $500,000 of that comes from the water tax, and the rest of it comes from general fund.
So a lot of the projects that you review here in Habitat Council will also be reviewed in the formal Watershed Restoration Initiative review process as well. And so that's kind of how our funding from this group joins into that funding for a lot of the projects. But then a lot of the projects that you'll see here don't go through that process because they're more focused on division properties or other division priorities outside of the WRI process. But the WRI database and it's kind of the whole conservation clearinghouse for all of the monies that kind of come in for these things, and centralizes the pot of money and mixes and matches things together to try to fund as far down everybody's list of priority projects as possible.
Can I ask a quick question on that? Why are some of the projects, like there's a handful that we're reviewing today, that has just you guys on it and not the Habitat Council at all? Why are we reviewing those when it's your money?
That, I guess that's a question for Alison.
And so when project managers put in their project proposals, on the front page, they click what funding sources they want it to go through, so WRI or Habitat Council. And then on the funding page, finance page, a lot of times they don't know what to ask for, so they just put a general WRI. And then I will go in after, and I didn't do this till like 4 o'clock last night because I had the computer issues. But anyway, so I'll go in and put in a Habitat Council amount, because some of the projects that we're looking at today put in WRI, but they aren't going through WRI, they are Habitat Council projects, so I've gone in and changed those funding
It just
sources.
basically haven't been updated.
Yeah, yeah, and a lot of times, folks other than our staff don't always know what to put in that field, so they just put a general WRI ask, and then we find funding for each of those.
So that's what we've told people applying to WRI is if you don't know, you don't care what funding source funds your project, just put a general WRI funding or will help you make that determination.
And this council at any time can change those numbers. So feel free, if the percentages or the total amount needs to be different, want it to be different, we can.
Yeah, I knew that part, but it just, and I saw some occasions last year, just like, and just never got around to asking.
Or if it's not a fit for this council or for this funding, then it's your prerogative to say, yeah, let's not fund it with Habitat Council.
And I think we ought to mention that too. When the agendas are created, you know, there's kind of a first cut that happens. So there's about 200 projects if you include the WRI and Habitat Council requests. And this council doesn't have the time to hear, nor wants to hear 200 projects. So Daniel and Danny and Allison, they're making a first cut of what they think is appropriate for this council. But if you guys see stuff in there that's not making an agenda, let these guys know that you want to hear it, and they'll bring it to the council.
Yeah, and by statute, the Habitat Council funding is big game funding, upland funding, waterfowl hunting funding, and aquatics fisheries, sport fish funding. And so these are all game categories, and so all of our funding is focused on those game categories. So that's why we're here. Is that fun? So.
Okay, Drew, maybe if you want to talk about Blue Ribbon and how that's basically there.
Yeah, so there's another council that was mentioned earlier. It's the Blue Ribbon Fisheries Council, and it's made up of anglers from throughout the state that all have different areas of interest in the fisheries world. So you have warm water people, cold water folks, and they meet like this, like you guys. I think they meet 4 times a year and have the same kind of process. They hear projects that are targeted toward a group of fisheries that we call Blue Ribbon Fisheries. Those fisheries represent the real money makers in the fisheries we manage. And I think it was $1 per fishing license sold that goes into that Blue Ribbon Fisheries Council, or that pot of money. And that's all restricted money, no DJ. And so it's the same kind of system. You know, the projects are heard, evaluated by the council, presented by our fisheries folks, and then recommendations come out of that. And there's projects, I guess, that are heard there that are also heard here, and some of them are WRI. So it's the same kind of mixed bag, you know, depending on the perceived value or value of each of the programs can kind of be balanced in the percentage of funding for the total project.
So in March, we'll have a joint meeting with the Blue Ribbon Council.
Okay. Toby, you want to talk about conservation permits? How that fits into all this?
Yeah, so, how long is that program? It's 30 plus years, I look it up, but It's in the report that I write every year. Conservation permits are there really to fill in the cracks, specifically for big game projects. It's an awesome system where every time a conservation permit is sold, the group that markets and sells that permit keeps 10% for administrative overhead. Then they cut a check through the division. It comes back as 30% of whatever that permit sells for, and that's to use at division discretion. And that money goes to a lot of our flight surveys and things like that, but also it helps supplement a lot of projects, and we make direct contributions to projects that are underfunded every year. Usually add hundreds of thousands of dollars annually to that. So then in April, and Danny, in April, we get together with the groups where they hold on to 60%, and that 60% then comes back to the division in a cooperative manner, an agreement of projects that they want to fund and projects that we need funded. So they'll sit down after Habitat Council's gone through and we kind of know where everything is, we know where our shortfalls are, and they'll allocate them that last 60% of whatever those conservation permits sold for, which huge amounts of funding there. So
4 million.
yeah, so it's a really, we couldn't do what we do without that supplemental funding, and it's an exciting program to have. It's a very small portion of Utah's wildlife that we allow to be auctioned there. And as somebody who works a lot with other states and sees their funding issues, we operate very differently because we've chosen to have conservation permits. So,
and compared to those other states, we have substantial, I think, more resources really because of the expo process, and the WRI process brings in all of these other funds to mix and match to the tune of, on the yearly basis, we're running
partnerships.
Yeah, we're running, upwards of between 30 and $50 million a year through the database that joins all of these funding sources together. But it also gives the chance for our constituents to have a say in where that money goes. And that's part of what this group does too. If people are worried about not having a say in the process, then get involved. There's plenty of places to be involved.
A lot of open meetings,
Yeah.
And Eric, you bring something up that's key, and that is that the money's awesome, right? The money and our funding and our ability to do some of these things is great. But honestly, probably more important than that is the buy-in that we get because it's a collaborative effort, right? It's not just Division of Wildlife pushing this forward. It's a lot of different groups and individuals that buy in and support and are actively involved in wildlife management. That's pretty cool.
Okay.
Thanks. Maybe Daniel or Tyler, if you'll talk about, I think Nikita kind of did a good job of this yesterday, of talking about WRI rankings and how that comes into effect here. And we'll hear a lot, we're talking, this won't rank well or that, but like, what does that mean for this group?
So WRI operates, it's a statewide program. It operates through 5 regional teams. We utilize the same division or same regional boundaries as the division does. So all 5 of those regional teams will get together, and we've had 2 meetings already this week, where they'll review from 15 to 50 or so projects per region. They review those projects, get a scoring committee together, and run them through the scoring rubric that we put together. At the end of the day, they'll produce a score. I think the total this year is like 150 points possible. That score comes up to us on a statewide level. So we'll come up with a statewide list of ranked WRI projects from, the highest ranked project down to the lowest ranked project. That score represents to us, from the standpoint of WRI, what should be funded first. But it's important to note that WRI's ranking rubric, if you're interested in looking at the details of that score sheet, it's available on our website, but it's much more than just wildlife. It does have a very big component related to both game species and non-game species. But it also takes into account other things like watershed health, water quality and quantity, fuels reduction, how well you've partnered, how well you're tying into management plans, if you're monitoring, things like that. It's got a whole bunch of different scoring criteria that we don't really consider here. But I think for this group, what that score really represents is what kind of a chance that project has to garner partner support. So what we do with that score and those projects is we take it to, our 50 to 100 different funding partners every year. And the message to them is, here's our list of priorities. Find a project on there you guys like, put some funding into it. The higher up that list you go, the more likely it is to receive support from other partners. So it's kind of a sales job on our part. And that sales job from me to this group is the same message. If you guys want to put funding on projects that are higher ranked in the WRI scoring rubric, it's more likely to get partner support. However, that may not be your priority. Your priority may be, more related to fish and wildlife. And then the meetings that we have with the sportsmen's groups, it's the same sales pitch. So when we finish our scoring process, you'll start to hear us talk about the WRI rank. And that's what that ranking represents.
We use that kind of as a guideline for you to know how well it ranked in WRI and what the current funding scenario is for that project. Does it need a bunch of additional funding, that maybe you would want to consider, attributing to that project or not. And so like Tyler says, that WRI process is a separate one from this one. This is just another pot of money that we try to plug into those projects as well.
And as the WRI administration, the very last funding source that we assign to projects is that $6 million. So once everybody has gone and assigned their money to the different projects, we'll go to the very top ranked project, put enough funding on it to fill it up to the top, move down to the next one, until we're out of funding. And a lot of projects will be kind of orphaned at the bottom, but they don't have enough funding. And so a lot of times we'll go back to funding sources and ask them to reassign your internal ranking.
So the other ranking we kind of do for Habitat Council and then also for our conservation permit is we have our regional biologists from the Habitat section and the wildlife section just get together and essentially look at these projects from a wildlife standpoint. So for instance, mule deer, we ask them to rank them 1 to however many projects they have, meaning what is your number 1 mule deer project? What's your number 2, 3, 4, 5? We do that for elk, we do that for turkey, we do that for moose, bighorn sheep. And that's what I use to put together a lot of the Habitat Council agendas, also our conservation permit agenda, meaning that we've identified these projects internally as DWR as some of the highest ranked projects that we want to see funding. So whether it just comes to WRI, whether it comes to Habitat Council, conservation permit, it gives them an idea from a division perspective of which projects we think are the best ones.
And Daniel uses the WRI ranking and that ranking to help fill the agendas. So if it scores low on that and it scores low through WRI and it's not on DWR lands and stuff like that, it probably won't make the agenda unless you guys raise your hand and say, we want to hear that project.
Can I throw a thought in there, Tyler?
You bet.
I think there will be some projects, we've already done that ranking that Daniel just talked about in our region. And I know there's some on that list that are going to score low in WRI that are our most important mule deer projects. And just by the nature of how the ranking for WRI works, we just know it's not going to rank well with WRI, but it's still an important mule deer project. The specific example I'm assuming you'll see in April is our Oak Creek Mountains project this year. It's a really small project. Isn't going to have water quality and water quantity stuff. It's not going to score well in WRI, but it's really important to us on the Oak Creek to sort some of the problems we have going on. But it's not going to be a really big financial ask. I think it's like $40,000, where a group like this paired with ECP can probably fully fund that without having it have to go through and receive funding through WRI. So just because if it ranks low in WRI, doesn't mean it's a bad project. It means it doesn't meet WRI ranking criteria.
So to follow up on that, can you guys, I'll say in the field, highlight that, say like, we want this one brought forward.
Yeah,
even though it
and that's what that
okay,
list
as long as you
Daniel's
can do that,
talking
cool.
about is, we're saying, we know it's gonna rank low WRI, but it's in our top 5 of the most important mule deer projects in our region.
So we'll try to point out in this meeting, like, yeah, this is down the list. If it's gonna happen, we're gonna have to take it all, or, you know, sell it to the conservation groups, or the combination of that. That's sometimes what we're talking about, and that just kind of gets you familiar with that.
And a lot of times Allison will preempt that discussion, knowing that it's a low ranked WRI project. Maybe it's already gone to the conservation groups and only received 5 or 10 grand and it still needs another 50. She'll put a $50,000 request to the council on that project. Just kind of knowing that if it's gonna get funded, it's gotta get the funding from there.
Yeah, so how our regions have ranked those projects, for especially for mule deer, you know, and aquatic species, we want to make sure that we get those projects funded. Those are our, you know, our staff's recommendations. They're the boots on the ground. And so you'll see a lot of those projects. You could actually see some really important projects or not see some really important projects that we won't bring to the council because they've already had all the funding committed and they're already taken care of. So those essentially don't get added to the agenda because they're already accounted for and funded. So we'll leave those off to save time, but
The one exception to that is conservation permit ones. If they fully fund it, we will still bring to the council just for kind of that peer review.
Yeah.
Process.
And the other exception is basically if it's on DWR owned land, you bring everything, right?
Yeah, if it's on our land, if it's ranking in their top 5 to 10, you're gonna see more scales.
Yeah, and I will say also on that, the division owns around the state, owns or manages approximately 600,000 acres of property, which is a lot of property, and it's growing all the time. And a lot of the work that happens on our WMAs, on our properties gets funded through this council. And so, you'll see a lot of that. You'll see a lot of that today. And so this council is one of the primary funders of that work on our properties. And so it's important for you to tell us and help us guide the direction of how we manage our properties and how we improve the habitat on our properties. And so, that's one of the big important aspects of this council is our properties are important to the division, to the state, to our constituents. You guys help set the tone of how those are managed and improved through these projects. Okay. Anything else?
Covers that. Like in our handbook, we've got a list of all our contacts. We've also got our regional managers in there. If you ever have a question, feel free to talk to our regional managers. The only thing if I mentioned our meeting schedule, this table has a timeline of kind of the meeting schedule that we do. We also do a summer field tour at some point, and so if you have ideas on what you want to see, let us know. We'll plan that towards our last meeting. But then we also the regional WRI teams also do summer field tours, one in each region, and we can get the invitation out for you for that because all our staff will be there, and you're welcome to come out and see their tours as well. And even just if there's a project you want to see or something, you can always contact one of our local managers or one of us, and be happy to get out in the field with you and see what all this money goes to and the great things that's happening out there. So
Yeah, we've talked about that internally. You know, you guys are in kind of a privileged position on this council. If you ever want to get out in the field with our guys and spend time, seeing the things that we do, we're more than willing to jump on a truck for a day.
can you say anything about the website or anything else?
Not much. We do have a website. So if you ever want any more information about the council, you can't find it on our website here. Just kind of talks a lot about the similar stuff that's kind of in the handbook. Some of the projects are on here. It gives you some of the stats of what's been completed, what we've been able to accomplish through this funding source. I noticed the slideshow is broken right now, and
We'll fix that.
our outreach section is aware of that, but otherwise, yeah, it's just a quick place to come jump in here. You can also get the handbook here as well if you need it. But yeah, has a link to the WI database if you need that. Yeah, just a quick place to reference the council a little bit on our division website.
So maybe before we move on, just one more thing, Danny, just again, I can't emphasize enough the importance of this council and your role, especially as the non-employee representatives from our constituents. It's important for you to understand the projects that we're reviewing and spend some time doing that. And we again appreciate all of your volunteer time doing this and working with us. It's important in the fact that there's a lot of eyes on what we do, and you all represent the public constituents for this funding, and it's an important role, and it seems like it might not be as important as it is, but it really is. And so just want you to remember that. And I don't know, Drew, did you have something else you wanted to add to that? Or
You guys, hold on, Drew. You guys make it easy to do our job. You guys know your jobs. You do them so well. I've been impressed the last couple of years, so. Sorry, Drew.
We talked a couple weeks ago with the leadership team, and you know, the Blue Ribbon Fisheries Council is kind of the mirror of this council, and the advocacy part that you guys play is so important. You know, Kobe kind of mentioned it. The reason that we have, you know, representation on the Blue Ribbon Fisheries Council from across the state is sometimes or oftentimes it's the locals that can go talk to, you know, the counties, the cities, where there's just a lack of trust or a lack of relationship between the Division of Wildlife, or the stress that causes between ag and wildlife. You know, there's a role that you guys can help with and often do, and that is so much more important sometimes than, you know, the meetings and the funding part of it. And just wanted to stress that, you know, to you guys, and let you know how important that is to us.
Yeah. So we'll talk about.
If I could, I would just add one thing. I didn't intend to give this info, but I had the opportunity to attend a biannual meeting with the Western Association of Wildlife Managers, and there's 26 Western states that would go to that twice a year, and the division fish and games from each state, and then their wildlife boards and wildlife commissions. There would be a really brief overview of what you guys work on here from the state of Utah. They would get to see that. And I can tell you that it was such a small amount of what you do, what the other states would see, but it blew their mind of the work that is done right here. They just could not even comprehend. Most states, when they were divvying out money, they would share with us, they would be talking on the terms of $2,000 to $5,000 that they would fight for. And so what you guys are doing is amazing. And I would echo what the division's told you. It's important work. So thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate that. Okay. Anything else, Danny?
We schedule the rest of our meetings.
Yeah.
Danny, before you sit down,
Yeah.
quick question. I don't want to get into the weeds, but we can probably talk about it later. But on the mission, not the mission statement, I'm sorry, the manual. Is there a way to discuss some of the things that's listed on there? So for example, I think there's an item listed under other one that I don't think is appropriate for the habitat aspect of it. Is it possible to add things or remove things?
I think most of this comes from the legislation directly.
Yeah.
So
So So I think,
There
yes,
is a way, Randy.
yeah, so let it maybe, yeah, let's have that discussion perhaps. Like I say, that is copied right out of the statute, so
And
we
that's
could,
what I was wondering. I didn't
yeah,
know
we
if
can work, if we have that list and we review that, we can submit that for, future rounds of when there's adjustments to the code and whatnot, if it's appropriate to change that. So, yeah, that's a good question.
I'll talk to you after that.
Okay. Any other questions on that, on handbook items, or we jump ahead? Okay. Dates.
Okay, I was gonna throw out in February, that'll be our waterfowl upland focus meeting. February 21st, February 28th. Doing a live doodle poll right now.
And we have a February 29th this year. It's a leap.
What were the dates you threw out, Danny?
21st, 28th.
Both of those work for me.
21st is not for me.
28th is better for me.
28th is not good for me.
So neither's good for you.
Yeah, I could send somebody in my place, so on the 28th, the 20. Yeah,
Yeah, maybe in talking about this, our highest priority people on those dates are you, public representatives. We can send other staff, to this meeting, whether, in place of Drew or Kobe sometimes, or I'll be at meeting, but, and so I'm gonna make sure that it's you all's calendars match up with these dates more than anybody else, really.
for my staff, the 21st would be best. I can send someone that day pretty easily.
Okay.
I vote the 28th just because
For
the
that
week,
expo,
yeah, and
your
I'm,
brain's gonna be fried.
yeah, but I can make whatever work, so it's fine.
What about 29th?
Any of those days work for.
28th and 29th works for me.
Like,
I can do the 29th also if need be. All 3 days work for me. I don't have anything scheduled yet.
I can make any of those work.
okay,
28th, 29th, good for me.
Preference on
that's difficult for you guys. You guys have got
We have work planning,
planning.
but like I said, I can send someone in my place.
Okay. All right. Sounds like we.
28th.
Okay.
Sounds good.
So in March, I think we've already worked with Blue Ribbon, right?
Yeah, Blue Ribbon already had a date scheduled, so it was March 21st, so we tentatively are planning on that date, but we'd like to get his feedback on that.
That works. I can make it work.
21st works for me.
I can't coordinate that.
That was the 21st, right?
21st of March.
Some of your staff.
One of your staffs, Tyler? You're all the staff.
I'm supposed to be in Blanding. But I can try to. There's a way out of it in there.
Sounds good. Virtually.
Well, I'm driving to Blanding.
Okay. Yeah, I apologize. That one kind of we get locked into early on.
So you guys will send out an invite for those days?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
And then for the big game meeting, I'd like to do that after for conservation permit meeting, so
That's on April 10th.
that's April 10. So what about April 17th?
That works for me.
I can go on.
Kobe's not here to read out any of these, so.
Yeah, I turned on his calendar and I'm not seeing anything on that date. So that is during a rack cycle though. That night there's a Southeast Region rack meeting, but that shouldn't impact.
We've got a BLM meeting that day.
Yeah. 18th, any better?
Which day?
April 18th.
April 18th.
It doesn't make any difference to me.
Same.
Okay.
I booked the following, but that week, I'm open.
Okay.
So 17th or 18th? 18th.
Then the final funding meeting, if you're going that week after, so like April 30th.
I'm good.
30th is good.
That one's usually a shorter meeting.
That's the most painful meeting. It's short, but it's painful.
Yeah, because by then, all of the conservation permit monies are in and a lot of the WRI stuff. The funding picture is really getting a lot clearer by then overall. So, but, okay, so the 30th then for our funding meeting? Okay.
We'll get invitations to now.
So the last thing to mention on scheduling stuff, we're not going to schedule it right now. We'll schedule it at that last meeting is for a tour. But so from now till then, as you're reviewing all these cool projects, just kind of keep in the back of your mind, we're going to get to tour something during the summer. And so, be thinking about what might be something that you would suggest that you would want to see on a tour. Again,
That was nice, right?
it is, it's a great tour for sure. Okay, so just keep that in mind. All right.
Okay, so I think so.
All right. Okay, thanks, Danny. Appreciate it. So we want to remind everyone before we kind of jump into our next item that there's drinks over here. Jump up and grab drinks anytime. It is 10 o'clock, so we'll take a break here after this next item. So the next thing on our agenda is and one of the things that we do in Habitat Council is we review any new WMA habitat management plans. And
There's
so
one item before that,
Alison,
there's a spreadsheet.
I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
No, it's not. All of my notes that I've been scribbling, I ended up covering up some of that agenda item. So I apologize, Alison. That's very important to review the spreadsheet. Okay.
Okay, so, every year, this is gonna be the spreadsheet. I'll send it out to you. I'll link to you guys. It's a Google Doc, so it's gonna be continually updating as we have meetings. Basically, it's gonna be just a running total of the projects that we have approved. This amount here is our appropriation. So that's what we have available to assign.
Let's say what approved means.
It's the exact same amount as last year. Really?
Yeah,
So
so the appropriation and our revenue is different. So we have revenue that comes in that's about 2.8 every year, around there. But our appropriation is 3.4. So we're allowed to spend up to that. We have money in the bank account.
Yeah, so,
That
yeah,
allows us to spend more than the revenue for this 1 year. So it allows us to spend up to 3.4. Basically this year, if we spend up to 3.4, that empties out our bank account, and then we have to pretty much kind of go back to what our revenue is. But, we've been spending out our bank account over the last couple of years, spending more than the revenue. Does that answer that question? Okay.
yeah, so yeah, that's really set by the legislature, what that like ceiling amount is. And yeah, if we have money in our account above the 2.8 that comes of actual revenue that comes in, we can spend that amount up to that 3.4. But like Alison said, after this year, if we spend out that full amount of money, we'll be back to spending what the actual revenue amount is, because we will spend out anything else in the account. So it'll be 2.8 next year when we're doing it for FY26.
Several years ago, our appropriation and our revenue were pretty close, but we've asked for increases in our appropriation because our because our bank account was getting pretty large. And so we can work
Split
on
it down now. Good.
spending that down.
When you say approved project on your spreadsheet, that doesn't mean final.
Yeah, it doesn't mean it's finally funded by you guys. It's just you've approved it to move forward for funding
In the
consideration.
process, yeah.
So what I've got on here are the list of projects for today. Kind of interesting. There's some really big asks for WMAs this year. So sorry, Steve, you're already out of money. Anyway. But yeah, we will address that as we go on. Everybody will get into the red at some point as we go. So so this is the total amount of habitat request. And then as we go through each project, you'll see that things are split up by percentages. So you look at a project, okay, 90% of this project is probably going to benefit big game. The other 10% is going to benefit upland. And so that's how that's split up, and that's calculating each of those, for each of those amounts.
And that number comes from the database. You can click on the Habitat Council funding source that pops up that percentage thing. I'm sure.
We'll have to adjust some of that.
Yes.
Yeah, and definitely. And that, and you know, right now, some of the, there were quite a few really big asks this year for habitat for our WMAs. So that's where you guys come in as far as deciding, yeah, we want to fund that this year, or no, we're gonna need to push that off.
And on that big game side, if we need to maybe work with Cody and Dax to adjust some of those amounts with possible, you know, ICP money, you know, our conservation permit money, or sportsman's groups, you know, that the ECP meeting might want to be in on some of those projects and fund some of that too. So I don't know, we'll see.
And some of these might be funded by the time we get to them, right?
Right.
Maybe not the WMAs, but other stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of customers.
Okay, so this is the total amount that we have for appropriation. Upland game and waterfowl get 10% of that. So that's that amount there. Big game then gets 49% of what's remaining, and sport fish gets 51% of the other 51% of what's remaining after we take the upland and waterfowl off the top. So that's what these numbers up here at the top represent. That's how much you have to spend for the year. And then this will be the running total of where we're at as we go. So, and then this here is what you have left or how much you're over your budget. I know, I'm sorry. I checked my calculations because I thought no way is Steve's money all gone.
It's only 220.
Well, and let's say, I wouldn't say that, well, we're just gonna slash all this stuff, you know? I mean, if you approve all those projects, it'll be great. That doesn't mean that you won't have any money to spend. Like I say, towards the end of the year, that final meeting, we'll mix and match. Figure out how to move that money around so that more things get funded down the list, including stuff that's here.
Yeah, so you don't have to worry about that number very much right now. Just
Yeah.
it'll be that final meeting where we'll.
Be focused on the project and the projects that are presented and the characteristics of the project, and not worrying about the dollar amount so much, because like I say, there'll be so many other funding sources that get plugged in. So even though it looks red now, it's gonna get plugged in with a bunch of funding sources, other funding sources as well. So
This is your
Kind of
best overview of all the projects. So if you come on here, you'll be able to see all the projects. They're also linked on the left-hand side. So
So
you
you
go back
can
to the
cover
database. And there's it's a great overview of all the projects.
So I'll send you guys all a link to that. You will be just view and comment aloud. You won't be able to change anything, but if you want to leave me a comment, you'll be allowed to do that. So.
Your spreadsheet is wrong. It's really, I love it. Yeah. Going through reviewing stuff.
Good. And if
you can always download your own copy of it, mess with the numbers too.
yeah. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Allison. Very important part of the meeting to understand spreadsheet. Okay, our next item on the agenda is, like I said, the Habitat Council also reviews habitat management plans for our waterfowl and wildlife management areas. And so today, we'll be reviewing the habitat management plan focused on the Juab area of WMAs. And so I know it says Juab County Habitat Management Plan, but it's really not the county's plan. It's a DWR Habitat Management Plan for WMAs in the Juab County area. So with that, yep, we might have to talk about that. We don't want the county thinking that we're telling them what to do. We're not. So we'll remind our staff that are here as they get up and present things to remember to introduce yourself. Tell us what you do and where you work.
I'm Mark Farmer, Habitat Manager for the Central Region. We have the most properties, WMAs, number-wise in the state, and the second most acres, I think. So we've got like 42 wildlife management areas, and I've got a lot of plans to write, and I don't have most of them on plans, but anyway, the reason it's the name Juab County, because they're all in Juab County, so I'm not sure we could change the name.
Yeah, we might need to. We still want the county thinking that we're writing a plan for them, but we're not.
Sense.
So
this picture is of our Bona Bench, WMA, right at the bottom of Mount Nebo, foothills of Mount Nebo. So go ahead, next slide. This plan covers 7 wildlife management areas. You can see from Seneca WMA on the north to Deep Creek WMA on the south. All these are deer and elk winter range WMAs, and most of them are adjacent to forest lands, which kind of makes them a multiplier for public land available to the public. But the difference is the wildlife management areas are not multiple use. Their main reason is to provide habitat for wildlife, primarily mule deer and elk in the wintertime. So that's our primary focus. So that, we don't allow a lot of things that the forest would allow. Anyway, that's the property, it's about 16,000 acres tall. Go ahead. Purposes of division ownership. Why do we own these properties? Mainly to preserve and protect critical winter ranges, like I mentioned. Next. Minimize depredation. That's an important aspect. We bought a lot of these lands that were depredation problems. Sangamon WMA is one of those, and the land as well. Depredation problems in the past, we purchased a property and became WMAs to try to keep those animals. Quit paying for the depredation, but also keep those animals from getting on agricultural lands. Last one. And provide hunting opportunities. Okay, next slide. Wildlife species on these properties, primarily mule deer and elk. That's our main focus. But we also have a lot of upland game birds on these properties, and a lot of hunting opportunities for those. And our non-hunted raptors, songbirds, cougars, bobcats, and coyote. Go ahead. Habitat characteristics are basically big sagebrush, pinyon chamber dominant. We got mountain shrublands at a little bit higher elevations. It's kind of that transition zone. We don't get real high up into the aspen conifer stuff. Shrub communities on many of these properties are moderately to heavily browsed by wintering big game. We have noxious weeds, weed spray annually. Go ahead. Okay, the plan describes the properties that are going to be managed. Go ahead. And how the lands are going to be managed. Talk about that. And last, those objectives, one more, and the strategies being used. So that'll kind of highlight all those things in the plan. Go ahead. Division's mandated to have plans for each of these properties. Go ahead, next one. Participation in instituted local persons and governments as part of that process. Next slide. Yeah, I can bring up a change those transitions. I'm doing after that. And the review process is kind of what we're doing here. This is one that stops in the review process. I'll also take us to the racks to get it approved for signature. Live outreach and coordination with the counties, local governments, public input, and adjacent private landowners. Some of the management issues on these properties are habitat restoration, annual operation maintenance, public access and use, the big one, and sometimes property boundary issues with adjacent landowners is sometimes an issue. Go ahead. Management goals and objectives. These plans are, management plan is taking into account a lot of these other planning efforts. One of those is the Wildlife Action Plan, which has species and habitats in the plan. And we also take into account that there are now management plans that are written, and those totally help us decide, what are our goals and objectives. Go ahead, next slide. Some of the strategies for habitat management is to maintain past pinning timber chainings. I'm going to change this a little bit. It's not just chainings, but treatments of any kind. Got to maintain those. We've done a lot of bullock treatments where we've mulched a lot of these trees and seeded. We want to maintain those past treatments. So reduce the expansion of pinning timber woodlands. We do a lot of that. It's a constant need, especially those things moving down our sagebrush habitats. Noxious weed control is an annual thing. We can't ever stop. It's not something that we're ever going to be out of business of. Next slide. Maintain those sagebrush and non-shrub communities best we can. Next slide. Limit the negative effect of roads. This is a big one. We reclaim unauthorized roads. If we just let things go, we'll have roads and trails all over our properties. We're right on the edge of the Wasatch Front. That's a big one for us, and it takes a lot of our time and effort. So, limit human disturbance during the winter. That's primarily try to close these properties from December 1st to the end of April if we can. Also protect these winter ranges from wildfire. A lot of these properties have been burned in the past. It's along the freeway corridor. Had several fires affect these properties. So reseeding burned areas is really important. And then increasing browse in some of those places that burned and some of those places that are old agricultural lands that we purchased. That's kind of what you're seeing at the bottom there. And utilize targeted grazing. That's important for us to graze the grasses out, especially those introduced aggressive grasses, and give our shrubs a chance to grow better. Okay, next slide. So part of this plan is also at the end of the plan, one of the appendices, the access management plan. This is where the reason we have this to make sure we remember the purpose of these properties to ensure public access and use of WMA. It doesn't matter that assist us in achieving our goals and objectives outlined in the management plan. So we allow public access as much as possible, but we don't want too much. So that's a fine line we gotta walk. And this access plan will kind of outline, exactly what we are approving and what we are. Next slide. So again, the goals and objectives, like we mentioned earlier, protect those habitats and for wintering wildlife, reduce depredation. So that's our main thing. What kind of access can we provide, but still reach those goals. Next slide. So in this plan, some of the access issues, like I mentioned earlier, usually created roads and trails. Trails becoming more and more of a problem. More and more of a thing you have to deal with. Vandalism. You can see that sign on the right. I've got about 4 signs got to replace this year. Trash dumping is always a problem. Fire. That picture on the upper right is the San Quentin fire that came off the freeway last year and burned a bunch of San Quentin property. Wildlife harassment and poaching. We have lots of people that like to hunt antlers, and if they have a winter closure, they don't like to wait for that, so they'll put the fence and ride their ATVs. They can't walk. If they walk, that's fine for us. They got to ride their ATVs, so that's a problem in the early spring, late winter. Habitat damage as a result, that's always a problem. Next slide. So we have a map in our access plan that shows the authorized roads and trails and whatever else. So you can see county roads in blue, those are things that we don't control. Black lines are WMA roads. Some of those will be seasonally closed. It depends on the property. We got authorized access only roads in pink, and then some trails. This one has 2 trails on it. We're trying to close some roads and turn them into trail so that non-motorized traffic is a lot better than motorized traffic in our opinion. So that's something we're trying to do here. Next slide. So another property shows you, and this is the van WMA. So typically we close these from December 1 to April 30th, like I mentioned. This property, because this county road goes through it, there's a portion of it we can close and a portion of it we can't. So these access management plan kind of outlines where you can go, where you can't. And that's basically it. Next slide. Anybody have a question? That's an Evo there. Yeah, I'm sure most of you guys figured that out.
Hey, just a general question. It's not specific to that. And I just pulled a blank. I think it was 2 years ago. There's a fire down in the Santa Quentin WMA. just the east side of the interstate.
Yeah,
How's that area?
so this will be the second growing season. Had a problem with the grazer, they had a permit for the property. We tried to keep them south of the fire, off the fire, and these cows didn't cooperate. So we're gonna do a better job of that this year, but we see a lot of that, it's come back in. Unfortunately, it burned a lot of shrubs as we planted on that property, and looked like most of those didn't survive. Sagebrush is pretty easy to kill, so a lot of those shrubs didn't survive. But I'm sure it's gonna come back good. It'll look a lot better this year. The first growing season looked pretty good. It should look a lot better this year. So we did make a green strip along the fence we harrowed and planted some firewise species right along the fence, the fence from the freeway. And we're gonna spray that with esplanade this year, which will keep any grasses from coming up. So that should help keep fires from spreading fast, from that fence down to our property. So we'll see how that works out. We're gonna be spraying that this next fall. So try to keep that from happening in the future, but it's looking good.
Mark, I just had a couple of questions and maybe one comment. So, it says, I was just looking at the data plan, they've already gone through RDCC then.
It's in RDCC right now.
Okay,
And
and
I think it's done by first next month. I've got a date.
what does support look like from the county?
That's a good question. I sent this to the county and the new council. Usually we don't get a lot of input from the counties. The Utah County, we did a plan for Utah WMAs. Didn't hear a word. Jeff County, haven't heard anything yet.
Sanpete County sure cares.
Sanpete County usually does, yes. I'm gonna go with Jason to the payment meeting with Jeff County, and we'll bring this up and take some hard copies of the draft plan. And so we're still totally open for input and feedback. So we're still working on that with the county, but it's pretty typical. A lot of counties don't really have the time or the inclination to read the plan or make any comments.
Okay.
But we will get that, talking about that next month.
And then the only thing that I guess the only comment I have, and maybe it's in here and I missed it, which is obviously a possibility. But I would say, and I know Eric Anderson's been working on this. I know Santaquin, WMA had water associated with it in ag fields.
No water rights that we got when we bought the property.
Yes, and I think we are still very interested in trying to acquire water rights and get water back on there. I know that Eric's worked on this for years. He said it's really, really hard. And
Especially with the increased amount of housing going down there, I think it's gonna become very difficult.
I still think with our focus, I would love to have that be part of the plan. So we're gonna continue to try as a strategy.
Okay, yeah. we could do that.
I don't wanna,
If you wanna,
I can send that as an
send me
email.
an email
or
and
something
just
like-
say something to add to that. I totally see what you're saying.
Absolutely. I don't want to have places where we had ag and had water, because we all know how hard those places are to rehab.
There's nothing worse than abandoned ag land.
And if we can
Yeah.
get it back in ag, the benefit, I mean, we bought it because of the ag.
And it was a huge depredation issue. That's why we bought
Sometimes,
it.
but
That's still right part of it.
And that's not all of them. I just think if the possibility's there, I think the direction we've been given is don't give up on that.
Yeah, that sounds like an idea. Send me a email on that. I'll
So
put it in.
each region, Toby, I guess, for everybody's information is, each region has a priority list of areas where they would like to acquire additional water rights for say either shares or allow deeded water. And so, Mark, this is already on that list.
It is I think it is on the list.
Yeah. And so Eric Anderson has that list and is always reviewing that and knows the priorities in each region for water to acquire. And he's always keeping his eye out for when water
Yes.
becomes available.
Yeah, and I talked with Eric. I know this is on his radar. I just, it's easier to spend money on it if it's part of the plan.
Good.
So I
I
just
agree.
like to see this right.
I totally got it. Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions about the Juab area WMA's plan? And like Mark said, in this area, there's a lot of smaller blocks of property of the division owns.
as opposed to like a big Cinnamon Creek or a big Gordon Creek in our southeast region. And so that's why these plans sometimes is kind of a group of all those properties together, because they're managed similarly. They're smaller chunks and since they have similar management, they're grouped together.
It's a lot easier to do it that way.
We do have other properties in GF County, but they're not big game.
Right, they're not the same type of properties, yeah. They're more waterfowl type properties, not the game properties.
So, okay.
Right, so, yeah,
All right.
help me with the title on this, though.
Probably said a county, but Juab area. Even though
That's not a bad idea.
even though they're all really contained within the county, it's from an external, perspective, probably that's probably not that big of a deal. But it's meant to be Juab area WMA's habitat management plan.
And we can do that.
Okay. Counties get touchy about.
We should have a title
that kind of stuff.
contest. That's when it gets a prize.
No, we're not gonna have voting in the vote basis for our name of our plan. Okay. Any other questions about the process for WMA plan review or Mark did a great job about outlining the objectives of management.
How frequently are these updated? I know it was in there, but I don't. remember
Every
what it
10
was.
years.
Yeah.
Means I got more.
There isn't something.
Yeah, there's not, it's not statutory to have a specific review, but we try to get them reviewed when we can. But there's like you said, there's so many WMAs. There's still a few out there that we don't even have plans for yet. There's definitely ones that need to be reviewed and renewed, and they're working on that. And the regions are doing a fantastic job to try to address that. And I don't know, Dan, anything else you want to see that you can oversee that from a statewide perspective?
Yeah, we're trying to get all these in line, and some of them we have some plants that are pretty old, that need to be modernized, and that's it.
We kind of know what we need to redo because things changed so much in the last 10 years. That like the Timpanogos Wildlife Management Area, I've totally got to redo that plan because of the amount of public recreation that goes on, and we've had to identify the trail system on that property, which is unusual for us, but works pretty well. We really need to update that plan. And our South San Pete County WMAs were done in 2010. They really need to be updated. And our access plans there too have changed. So
We try to make this general, but it's gonna last a while, and
yeah,
not
but
be super.
updates will take as long as writing the original plan. It's just a matter of updating a few things. It's gonna be a lot faster.
Here's in August one, this makes my head want to explode.
You can be both.
So, I mean, with saying that, Mark did a great job of describing kind of, the management overall oversight of WMAs. These are not multiple use properties not only by, rule, state rule. We manage these for wildlife, but also our deed restrictions on the property. We have to manage these for wildlife and not other recreation uses. And so sometimes our state wildlife properties kind of get lumped into the federal multiple use doctrine thought. But we do our very best, generally speaking. These are wildlife properties, just like UDOT has a property for highways. You're not going to go institute grazing across highways because you want UDOT's properties to be multiple use. It's not going to happen. I mean, but we all use grazing as a tool to help manage our properties as well. But so it's important to know that and understand that. We get lots of pressure, but also a lot of the properties, when we acquire them, they'll have existing easements, permissions and things that we still have to recognize legally. And so it's a general statement. These are not multiple use properties, and we manage them for wildlife habitat, but there's other baggage that often comes along with the properties that makes it so that you still have to allow some of these things. Timpanogos WMA is one of those. And there's just a lot, but since it's right next to the Wasatch Front, there's tons of other recreation around. Mark's done a great job of trying to manage that and harness it to be a benefit to that property, but it's difficult.
Yeah, and I think, Mark, you knew by my comment, it wasn't a dig at you. That's a very challenging.
Yeah.
Problem.
Yeah, and so if we don't have the ability to enforce all the rules we want to enforce, we've got to embrace the user groups and get them to help you manage the property. That's what we're doing with Timpanogos. So all those trails, the trail system we came up with that our biologists are okay with. They're managing the trails because they're adopting those, so they're helping us manage the property, manage the trail system and sign all that stuff. So that's a lot better way to go than say no, 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 and it happens anyway, and it's a mess. And it was a really bad mess about 5 years ago. So.
Has there been any talk about making people that use these WMAs that aren't hunters to pay to play?
Yes.
I like that idea.
I think we should do something like that because I hate to have to come to this group to man. To pay
Whether
for
it's
all
a
our-
hunting license or
Well-
a stamp or something.
Yes, but it's been talked all the way through legislative circles and we're just not there yet. I mean, we do have, there is in code, you know, we could charge a fee up to $10 currently, but like I said, it's been talked about several times, you know, legislatively, it's been talked about many times and nothing has progressed on that front.
To implement something like that, we need broad support. It's clear last year that we didn't have it.
It tried going through last year.
Which
There was some support for it last year, but not enough.
and it had been looked at again, I think 3 years ago as well.
And it may get looked
So-
at again this year, like,
Right.
you never know. There's
Yeah.
definitely a constituency that feels like it's not fair that hunters and anglers fit the bill completely, or foot the bill completely, excuse me, and that other uses are occurring on the property. So that sentiment definitely exists. And there's also a sentiment of, hey, public land should be available for the public. So managing those two things is difficult. We find ourselves caught in the middle sometimes. So.
There's a precedent to Colorado passed some legislation that enabled them to charge anyone other than, you know, hunters and anglers to use their wildlife management areas. So they created some sort of fee, or they need you know, some sort of license, a hunting or fishing license in order to access those properties. And it sounds like that's working fairly well. So there's other places that have crossed that bridge.
I'd love to see that. So we don't have to pay for all that.
Amen to that.
Well, and I'll just put one other plug in here. Both our law enforcement, Division of Wildlife, as well as counties and Division of Recreation, you know, spend a fair amount of time on our WMAs and help us enforce, you know, the laws and the rules that are there. And so we get significant support from those folks and we really appreciate them, but still it's, especially along the Wasatch Front, is such a huge problem at times that it's hard to contain.
And one of the cons of doing that would be possibly, you know, the bikers or somebody else feels entitlement to like, okay, there's gotta be trails here. I'm helping pay. I need my trails or whatever. So
Yeah. If you provide a license, a non-wildlife use license, then they would feel like that there would be some sort of entitlement to accommodate them. And we don't want to
There's a
create that
road,
either.
you can use the road, you can use the
Well,
existing trail, but
it's
So
complicated.
I think we at least some of us have preferred that, you know, base it off of having a hunting tag or a fishing tag. That way they're contributing to those game use causes. And that's how we manage the properties, not for the other recreation things. So
Just on management plan, just in general, is Cinnamon Creek still coming up this summer?
Daniel, what can maybe answer that?
Good question.
I didn't see a sneak in or look your direction.
We are working on it. Our committee struggled with some issues on how to use roads and other things up there. So we're trying to still work through as an agency, whether we should accept the committee's recommendation or maybe adjust it a little bit. So our plan is next few months to buckle down and work on that plan, but there were some things are still not quite resolved that we're working through. So I expect this summer.
And I'm sure you're aware, but you know, there's at least one or two property owners that are putting in access from the Eddington zone.
Well, their private property.
Yes, yeah, off the roads up there.
Yeah, that's one of the sticking points. Is that issue.
Okay, last thing I'm gonna mention before we take a break is not all of our WMAs are just like terrestrial, big game, or upland game property stuff. We have whether it's actual fee title access or conservation easement access or other types of like walk-in access for angling opportunities all throughout the state. That is kind of part of this too, but they tend to be just like smaller points on a map as opposed to big chunks of property. And so we don't talk about them as much, but I just want to mention that that's still out there as well. And we're actually kind of in a mode of right now looking at making sure folks know about walk-in access and whatnot around the state and you know, promoting that program, that there's still money there available for landowners to get paid for allowing access to streams and rivers for fishing. So, okay. Any other questions about habitat management plans or this plan specifically? Move on. Okay, thanks, Mark. Appreciate that. Good presentation.
Do you have a deadline for comments from council?
No, we didn't say a week. Or doesn't need to be different from that.
We got to vote on that, on passing it or anything?
No, it's informational.
But if you have any comments, get them back to Mark.
If you could get it to me by the end of April, that'd be great.
Okay.
Cause in May, we'll want to take it to the rack, so I'd like to have a final, draft over by then, so.
Yeah, so at least the central region rack will see it,
Right,
not the other.
right.
Okay. Okay. All right. With that, we're going to take a 10-minute break. It's 10:34. We're going to break till 10:45 here. And so we'll take a break for a minute and then we're going to jump into projects. So, okay. You ready to go, Seth or Carmen or Michael? Okay, we're ready to go. Fire us up. Yeah. Okay. All right. Thanks, everyone. So we're going to jump into project proposals now, unless there's any other questions before we move forward. Okay. Like we talked about, a lot of the projects that you're going to see today are going to be WMA focused, management and maintenance projects. A lot of it's focused on our properties. Part of the reasoning for that is a lot of the project proposals that are in the system are still being vetted by staff and through WRI and whatnot. And so those agendas will get built for the upcoming meetings. So in our next meeting is the waterfowl, right? Correct. So there'll be a lot of that. So Angie will be ready to talk about lots of ducks, or at least approve them. So maybe a few pheasants too. All right. Okay.
I saw checkers and some other birds on some of these projects, so pay attention.
Okay. So again, I think the only other advisement I'd have at this point is when we're looking at the finance page and the percentages and whatnot, feel free if you think that those need to be adjusted at all, to bring that up. Also part of what you consider here, and Blake, since you're new, you'll kind of get a feel for how this goes. We essentially end up approving most of the projects that end up going through for, like I say, it's for consideration for the director's office. That doesn't mean that it'll get fully funded when all is said and done at times, but you're approving for it to continue through the process, to be considered for additional funding and whatnot. So
know that the big game numbers and the waterfowl numbers are never big enough. There need to be higher percentages for them always.
well, I think they all need to be bigger. They all need to, they all need to be bigger. I've got thoughts about that.
That was fighting words.
Okay. We like to remain cordial.
Is there any fish or birds?
We encourage active arm wrestling. No, I'm kidding. Anyway, so our first group of projects, we're going to hear from Central Region. And so our first project is number 6876, and that number is basically the database number that's in the WRI system. That's your project. 6876 Levan WMA Mule Deer Winter Range Restoration.
This is a type of project that we kind of rely on Habitat Council for our conservation commitment partners. Some of these projects, just small ones on WMAs, don't ask for a lot of money. They do not rank well when they will not get funded through WRI. So we've been working on the van for a few years now, trying to get some more shrubs in some of these old ag lands, these old pasture areas, as you can see in this picture. And that's we affectionately call our Mad Max dozer. We'll be talking about that in a couple of the projects as well. Go down. This is the van WMA. You can see there's some ag lands on that northwest corner and on the south. There used to be pastures. There's not any shrubs on them. We're trying to improve those shrub communities for the woods with deer wintering. So we started in 2019 by planting some seedlings with Vexar protectors to keep them being grazed in 2019, and we expanded that in 2020, and then we're kind of working through some of these ag lands, kind of getting blocks of shrubs established. This fall, we did this in 2023 right down there. We'll show you some pictures of that. But some of these ag lands, you can see there's no shrubs in there at all. We're trying to improve that winter range. Next. So this is the Van Max dozer. You see the green box on the top there. That's bed of brush seed. That drops into a scalp behind the blade and dropped right in the middle of the furrows. You can see in the middle of that track, about 2 inches deep. The yellow box over the tracks drops a broadcast mix of sagebrush, quarry, saltbush, and a few forbs. Drops it right on the track, it gets run over. So we're planting shrubs at this, when we're clearing those scalps, and then we'll come in later and plant seedlings on top of that, so we kind of hedge our bets. So we know we're gonna get some survival here, and that's gonna be protection for grazing, and then we're also seeding shrubs in there. Hopefully we'll get both things to work. So that's 5,000.
competitive grasses that we're trying
Yeah.
push away.
So this is like crested wheatgrass, a lot of introduced competitive grasses, and these scalps are pretty much mandatory. They really help release that competition for a few years until those plants can become established. So that's the bottom picture there is the 5,000 shrubs we planted this fall. And we're also seeding with an ATV. After everything's done, we're putting a little extra seed on top because the scalps will drop seed right in the middle here, but they won't get the edges. So we're dropping a little extra seed on top of that to get some more sagebrush seed and some forb seed out. Hopefully to get those things to grow by seed as well. Okay, next page. So pretty easy projects, not very expensive. Our objective is to plant 5,000 shrub seedlings in scalp rows and to seed those scalp rows. And we're gonna be buying seedlings for the next, we have to buy seedlings and plant them in March and then get them in the following fall. So it's kind of overlaps 2 years of our funding cycle. It's kind of a pain, but that's how it works. But there's some seedlings you can see that we planted in 2021. That are coming up on the previous seedings. So fairly expensive project, but one we really rely on from this council and from our conservation partners in Fondo. Any questions?
Quick question. I really like these types of projects. I think they're great. What's your survival? Because this has been, I think there are 3 or 4 projects before this one is similar size. What's your success rate on this?
So in 2020, we planted in the fall, 72% of our sagebrush plants survived. So the problem is I can't count all of them. So I'm counting, going down the road, I'm counting a certain number of shrubs, and then I'll skip over the next row. Sure. And I'll kind of go through like this. And so I counted a bunch of sagebrush, and we had 72% survival. And in 2021, let's see, another sample of 78%. Typically, it's over 50 for sagebrush. Other shrubs, we tried some other shrubs here. Bitterbrush is, I don't know why it's so difficult for seedlings. We tried some buffalo berry in here, some woods rose, which did pretty well, and some other species in the land trying to help provide some turkey food. But those don't have as good a survival. We're usually getting just under 50%, and sagebrush is higher.
What are you getting on your bitterbrush one? I know it's a tough one.
None. As far as seedlings, very few. And it's frustrating. And I don't know why. So I'll show you some pictures here in a little while about some seedlings we're getting from bitterbrush that are coming up from seed that we're pretty excited about. But yeah, it's hard to grow bitterbrush. And curly mahogany is one we've tried and we've had some success. And that's one we really like on these wind ranges because there's a lot of curly just to the east of these on these properties. There's a lot of curly, and that's really a highly preferred shrub as well. So, but sagebrush has the best survival. And I've got a spreadsheet attached to the website, which to their website that has some of our survival counts that we've done so far.
I will just mention, Mark isn't trying to figure out what works best, and what doesn't work best on his own. We have a whole research facility in Ephraim that Danny and Kevin Gunnell oversee, that has research plots where they're researching what grows well, what doesn't grow well, what seeds work, what seeds don't work, how can we code them,
Chemicals, they're researching. Anything else you want to say about that really quick, since we're on the subject?
Well, Mark and we've also been working with the Forest Service partner on the transplanting issue.
Yes.
He's been doing a lot of research on that.
They have
some good information on how big of plants we need, and when to plant them, things like that.
Yeah, and we're connected in with other researchers, and then federal government and all the research work they do as well, to make sure that the methods we use for implementing these projects are going to be the most successful. But again, every area is different, the climate, microclimate, complexities are different, and so this, so these managers and these habitat teams aren't doing it by themselves. They're collaborating as much as possible along with our own research team, basically, to figure out the best way to do these things. So,
And I don't want to plant a whole lot of stuff one year because you might have a crap year and everything dies, right? So
yeah.
we're doing a little bit every year to spread that across, hopefully catch a good year, especially with seed. So, and we've done a seedling study with foresters like Danny's talking about, and we've kind of dialed in the size of seedling. We were planting 2-year-old seedlings that cost $4.50 a piece. And now we're down to a 9-month-old seedling that costs about $1.50. So that shows from this, we planted these all around and they've monitored them to find kind of the sweet spot. And that's kind of what we came up with. And we'll just take a picture of one of those here in the next presentation. Yeah.
2 other quick questions, and I'm sorry. It's just me. You've been here before, I do this. On several of these projects, this one and your next one, and I think some from some other regions as well, this type of project seems to be on a 10,000 acre, on a 10-acre plot. Is there a reason for that?
That's just about what 5,000 plants would cover. When we scalp, when we can scalp in a block, it's about that much or a little bit less.
Okay.
So basically I'm taking, I know I've got a certain amount of seedlings to go into rows. I want to spread them 5 feet apart. So I'll multiply out how many linear feet of rows I need. And I'll scalp them many rows on this project. On the Timbernotes project, it's a little bit different. I'll explain that in a second. So it's.
Yeah, Mark, so tell us maybe who does all that planning? I mean, are you using volunteers on some of these sites, or
I would like to be able to use volunteers. Can't rely on them because we're planning in the fall. We have a bigger window in the fall. That's when we want to seed the stuff on the scalp rows. And we've learned that we need to put it as late in the fall as we can, because if we do it early October, that's too early, and especially when our plant's safe. We do some with volunteers, but we can't count on them, so that's why we pay a contractor to plant these. And it costs about $1 a plant to plant them with a contractor. It's well worth it, because we planted 30,000 last year, so I can't do that. My back wouldn't allow that. I don't like to do that.
Yeah. But in a lot of other instances, a lot of other types of projects, we do dedicated hunter projects, other volunteers from other organizations come out and do things, but sometimes that's not the best way to go about it as well. So,
and the last question on this one is, had quail on here. I pulled up the map and looked really hard.
There's quail population and turkeys on Salt Creek, just to the south of this property.
Let's just say, so I saw a canyon, like 2 canyons down.
We're trying to pull it north and provide them with some reason to come north. And that's what we're trying to do. And the turkey folks.
I even seen some ducks and fish on that project.
oh, here we go.
That's one of the reasons we're targeting that south end with.
So you're trying to entice them.
We're trying to entice them up and provide some food on some of the shrubs for those up again.
Good question, Angie. Good question. Okay. All right. Any other questions on this project? Do we have a motion on this one?
I'll propose to, what's the word? For full review.
Okay. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Blake. So we have a motion from Randy. We have a second from Blake. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Okay, motion carries. Thank you. All right, next project, 6935 Timpanogos WMA Mule Deer Winter Range Restoration.
Okay, the Timbernotes property had 2 fires on that note since, let's see, the first one was in 1998, tank fire. And then 2020, we had the range fire. So it's kind of eliminated all our good shrubs on the property. I'll have the oak and really pretty aggressive introduced grasses on the property. So this is looking at that property. You can see these grasses in the understory are pretty aggressive. There's a lot of alfalfa in there too. They planted just a few things. This is burned twice. So we're trying to get shrubs back in these and onto Timpanogos property. So we're doing the scalping thing with the Mad Max dozer. And this project is a little different. We're counting more on seeding shrubs because we don't have, it's not like a nice easy place to plant. So we're scalping a lot more and we're planting a couple of thousand shrubs a year. Go ahead, next one. That's Mad Max Dozer we talked about. It's a wonderful machine. Next slide. Okay, we started in 2021 working in these blocks. So we'll get a certain amount of seed, certain amount of bit of brush and broadcast and scalp as many areas as we can. So we're scalping areas that are open. They're not oak clones because a lot of oak on this property. So we're trying to find those open areas. So we get 12, 15, maybe acres or so on those scalps that run out of that seed. And then we planted shrubs and last year, or this last fall, in the 2022 scalps. We scalped 2023 right up there, and we're planting one in 25. We've got a few other places we'd like to go after that. That kind of shows you what it looks like. Next slide. I think here's some of the seedlings. Now this is the forming saltbush plant that came up from seed. It's right next to a scalp done in 2021. So the scalps are still there. You can see how aggressive that grass is. Scalps are still there, and we got some from seed, and there's one below it that's a seedling, not growing as fast as I'd like. We got seedlings that are coming up in those scalps from last year. We got a volunteer group that helps us with the trail maintenance and the Utah County Trails Alliance, helping us plant shrubs on this property this last October. And we planted about 2,000 shrubs in some of the scalps from our 2021 scalping project. That's what we're gonna do again this year. Go ahead, next one. So pretty inexpensive project is it's mainly scalp seed and some shrubs. And seedlings will purchase to plant in fall of 25. Sorry. Anyway, any questions on that one?
Are you anticipating better success with your bitter brush here? Because that's one of the things you had listed.
With our bitter brush?
Yeah.
We can always hope. As far as bitter brush seed, definitely, I think we'll get some seedlings coming up from that. Seedlings, we're still having a hard time keeping those alive. I'm not sure why. Sagebrush, like I said before, does pretty well. Curly mahogany, we're trying to get that to grow here.
I think wasn't bitter brush listed as one of the foods we're planting here? Or
Yeah.
am I misremembering?
Well, we're planting bitter brush from seed. We're planting sagebrush and a little bitter brush and pouring saltbush from seed. So bitter brush seedlings are where we're having a hard time keeping alive. So,
Transplant.
yeah, transplant.
Okay, any other questions on this one? All right, do we have a motion?
Make a motion to approve for funding consideration.
Okay, that's second. All right, I got a motion from Tyler and a second from Steve. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. All right.
You want
motion
both
carries.
that Wallsburg going up? So I can do all these together.
6948 Wallsburg WMA. And this WMA is, I mean, they're all really important. This one's really important.
Wallsburg property is probably our most important WMA for wintering deer than anything else we've got in our region. We winter hundreds of deer and hundreds, a few hundred elk every year. So we got some shrub poor areas on the Wallsburg property. Again, we have introduced grasses that were planted 40 years ago. They're pretty competitive. You can see eventually if they don't reproduce naturally, those sagebrush die off and they're not replaced. So we're going in some of those areas and actively planting sagebrush, trying to get that stuff back. Next one. So some of these shrub poor areas, here's a trend study that was established in 2018 and it's repeated in 2021 after we planted in there. This is a very dry year, so and it was grazed, so it doesn't look that bad now. It looks a little bare here. It's in the fall too. But anyway, you see some of the shrubs he's got growing in there that weren't there before. The next one. So we got quite a few shrub poor areas on the property, and these are some of the places we want to get some more shrubs into using this method. So next slide. This is Round Valley where those colored polygons are. And we started that in 2019 planting seedlings. And then in 2021, we did some seedlings and some just scalping and seeding. In 2022, we just did scalping and seeding. And last year we planted about 4,000 shrubs, a 10-acre plot there. We scouted and seeded some seedlings in that. We're going to expand that to 20 in this area, 2024, and then move over to this area further east, and plant some of those shrub core areas. So go ahead. So Mad Max again, this is scouts we did. So we usually get 10, 15 acres of scouts, and we're gonna plant, I think we're gonna get up to about 6,000 seedlings this next time. And we want to establish shrubs from seed. And we got some good success in this property, and I was really excited about. Next slide. This is some of the seedlings we've got that are growing up from 2019 seedlings. And that's the bottom left is from this year. Go to the next slide. So these are scalps from seeded last in 2022. These are a bit of our seedlings coming up from seed. This is a scalp row. It goes like this. And you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 plants. 8 seedlings right there that are looking like the one on the left. I haven't seen any of that big before. And you know, we had a really wet year. I think that was like perfect timing. And so we're really excited about that. In a few years, those things will be getting a lot bigger. The thing it would be nice to have seedlings with XR coatings to prevent grazing on, is to make sure these are going to survive. If these don't survive, the seedlings that are protected will, and will get established. Hopefully we get these established in about 10 years. Hopefully we'll have a bunch of shrubs out that we didn't have before, which would be really cool. Anyway, really excited about that. Next thing. So fairly expensive project, seedling, seed, and scouting costs, contract and plant seedlings. That's pretty much it.
Can you pull up and look at the financials on this one? I can't remember. I didn't write down the breakdown. And the reason I'm asking on this one is in your proposal, you've listed this out as a historical sage-grouse area.
I used to be a lek on that Brown Valley property.
Is it an active one? I pulled up the
No,
lek count.
it's not active.
I was gonna say, I don't,
Active for 20 years, but there used to be one.
I was gonna say, like, I'm.
I can't say there's not sage grouse using this area at all.
What
that
about-
now, there's no sage-grouse up there.
Well, they use this as a pheasant. They use this as this year.
They drop pheasants here in the fall.
And then I know that the high school does a chucker hunt
Yes.
in that area too. Do you know if anything gets held over, survives if they
Survives
don't?
that?
Yep.
Maybe chuckers. I doubt the pheasants do.
Yeah,
Okay.
they're-
No, they're not gonna
No,
survive.
I actually go up there, spend a little, not on
Do
the
you?
high school thing. The western half of that area I know fairly well. There's no birds there. I wish there were, but there's no birds there.
I can't say there isn't, so that's why I put it in there.
And I preemptively knew how Randy would feel about this one, so I actually made it.
Oh, cause I brought that up,
100%.
it was like, I know there was bird stuff on there, and I was gonna.
Hey, I'm
fight
still
it.
in the room.
Yeah, well,
Thank
I just knew that, I just know the area and know that it is historical sage grouse area and that there's sage grouse close by, so I
Yeah.
just went ahead and just changed it.
Yeah, and I love the area and I like the project, so I'm not, but it's just, yeah, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Trying to get the score as high as you can on WRI. It won't get enough. It doesn't have enough pieces of things like aquatics and fuels and all that stuff to rank well with WRI. But it's really important project. Get our shrubs back on this property.
And like to reinforce, I like the project and I really like the area and it's an important area.
All right, any other questions?
There are some houses up there. Yeah, I haven't, there could be, I haven't seen them.
We've seen them every time we do a range right up there. We usually kick a couple of.
Good. Cool. Any other questions?
I'll move to approve for consideration.
Okay,
I'll second.
all right. We have a motion from Randy and a second from Angie. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed, say no. All right, motion carries. Okay. See, Mark, we going back to the sand pitch?
Project management, Green Camp Forest Service here.
Okay, come on up and introduce yourself and so we're considering 6947 Sand Pitch Mountains Mule Deer Guzzler.
Okay, Drew Crane, I'm a wildlife biologist in Ephraim, with the Forest Service. So, yeah, this project, it's a 3-year process. So, you know, in the Forest Service with the NEPA, the regulations and stuff, you've got to get it cleared. You've got to have a plan. This project is cleared. It's part of a larger expansion of guzzlers on the Manti LaSalle. It's a programmatic NEPA, meaning we can work on the Farron side, we can work on the San Pete side. There's 12 different locations cleared for guzzlers. These are the first 3 on the San Pete side. It's on the Sand Pitch Mountains, Levan, Sand Pitch. I think your WMA marks just below me here to the north there. What really sparked this project, this proposal, you know, is the drought the last 2 years, 3 years. As this project progressed, it was thought up. We started looking at different locations on the forest, how we can help. Primarily, this one was geared at mule deer. I hear a lot of mule deer this morning, especially from your director. It makes me excited. So, you know, we looked at mule deer on the Sand Pitch. One of the limiting factors on the Sand Pitch for years has been water. So I don't know if you'll zoom down just a little bit here. This is a big tract of private land. It's got some BLM, it's got some state in it. On the southern end here, the reason being there's Chicken Creek that runs down right here. There's a series of troughs right here, spring here, feeds this canyon, spring here, and it feeds like 6-8 troughs. So the whole southern half of that, other than Deep Creek right here, these deer are having to travel clear off of this, clear down in here to get water. I don't even know if they even make it back sometimes. But the years of 2021, 22 really magnified the water issue up on this mountain. What normally dries out in August, late July, we saw it dry out in May. We lost the water in the troughs. This was barely trickling, and I think it was gone like early August, but that's a mainstay water that was completely, you know, we didn't have any downwards water carrying down. So really drove the project. They're situated. The guzzlers, we're going to need to fly some in right here, fly this one in. This is on Levan Peak. This is Sage Flat. We can haul this one in. This one's going to need to be flown in, really rugged areas. So what we're really trying to do is expand the habitat, have a consistent, dependable water source on the southern end of the Sand Pitch, get these established, start utilizing the habitat. You have a large burn that happened here 10, 15 years ago. Not a lot of water here. The only water I know about is in Deep Creek. You're really not expanding this habitat. You know, it's just as simple. What's the 4 key components of habitat? And why would you do it, brother? You know, so food, water, shelter, space. The project's that simple. We have habitat that's been improved in areas, and you know, we're missing a component of that. So we're trying to expand that, utilize that habitat in those areas. It also goes into tandem with a project we'll introduce in 2 or 3 years. It's just starting the NEPA process. In fact, we're asking for it in WRI on the ARC surveys, and it's a 30,000 acre project that will look to expand this habitat even further and try to provide mule deer ungulates on that mountain. So trying to get the water established first, then working on the vegetation, trying to handle the simple stuff, then work to the more complex stuff is where this goes.
All right, any questions on this project?
I have a general question. These are guzzlers. Is there and I'm not sure I know, is there a management plan for to keep like maintenance plan?
Yeah. You know, the state and the forest as well will manage the the guzzlers. We have wildlife crews that will go around and they'll manage it, upgrades, upkeep, keep an eye on it. We plan to run cameras on it and just to see the usage, kind of get an idea. So, yeah, it will be managed, it will be watched.
These guzzlers are maintenance free, but you will need to go look at them every couple of years to make sure they're operating properly. But you don't have to look at them every year.
And the aprons haven't been stolen.
Yeah, or bears dug a hole in your dome or your bunk tank.
Yeah. So that's kind of the wildlife, on the tractor there. It's really odd to me, the separation. There's usually so much, and that's not even overlap. I checked it, that's not overlap.
Is it?
It's not.
I've forgotten the color coding. I ask every year.
Yes, and I'm colorblind. Let's go over that.
So that's a really interesting picture. I had to look at that for 10, 15 minutes and figure out if that's overlap or if that's truly. So this is really kind of the tops run down. There's canyons, your draws, guzzler here, guzzler out here, and the guzzler in here. Coding.
What does it do?
Orange,
They're asking about
The orange, the blue.
Orange is mule deer, blue is elk. And
Black is lion, or the mountain lion.
Yeah.
Pink is
Pink.
better.
pink is
Pink is bear.
bear.
Okay, you guys have to think about it too. It makes me feel better.
I think they cut it off. It usually is right over here on the side, but I think it's just cut off.
Well, you can click on one dot and see what it is. When you use it.
Yeah, when you're using it, this is just a screenshot.
And then a specific question to this project is, in several times in the write-up, you've listed concern for disease, trying to disperse the animals.
Right.
Is there a chronic waste problem here, or is it just
Just as a habitat biologist, trying to get out in front of this. What was happening is we were losing the water source. It was drying up. All of your ungulates are coming together. There's a lot of competition on that water source in Chicken Creek, especially in the head of it before it goes back into the ground. And then this trough right here, they were drying out. You had all your ungulates coming together, right? So competition for water, living in close areas, you're not distributed out on the landscape, potential for disease, potential for, wildlife diseases. So water scattered out through the canyons, utilizing habitat away from each other, growing those herds separately, for ungulates, for disease.
Are these gonna be, I saw the fences then, so there'll be fence like that to maintain the water for wildlife.
Dedicated wildlife water.
Cool. Any other questions on this one?
Drew, I didn't hear your last name. What's your last name?
Crane.
Crane? And what office are you at?
Ephraim.
All right, we have a motion on this project.
Let's just click on that. Yeah, let's just click on that. I can't remember.
Oh, hold on.
What else is up there? Sean.
DCP like loves
I'll make a
these,
motion.
So
You won't have to pay for any of these.
What's that?
Said you won't have to pay for any of these. Sportsmen love these.
Do they? I'll make a motion to pass it.
Okay. One second. Okay, we have a motion from Steve and a second from Angie. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. All right, motion carries. Thanks, Forest Service, for coming and hanging out with us and showing us your project and for being a partner. So really appreciate it. Okay. Our next project, Nebo Big Game Guzzler Installation, 6994.
Steve, just so you know, I did some research to see if there's any possibility for us.
I'm glad Drew went first because this is pretty much the same,
Unsurprising.
same type of project. I put 4 points on here. We're only gonna do 3 guzzlers this year. This one right here is on our WMA. This one's one that we put money into replace, or they got wiped out by an avalanche. Yeah, you can see it's on the WMA there. We'll replace that one, fix it, whatever we need to do. But the other ones, this one is just onto the forest on Loafer Mountain. And then these 2 are on Dry Mountain. All 3 of them are pretty high elevation guzzlers. The one on Loafer is about 9,500 feet. The other 2 are about 9,000. But Dry Mountain kind of runs north and south. The only major water source is down off of the mountain, in the Santaquin Meadows and that, so the deer now are gonna have to pull off there. The main focus of these is definitely gonna be deer, but where they are high elevation, I would anticipate elk and, there's mountain goats on in both areas, so I would think the goats would use those as well, so. They're all pretty remote. We're gonna have to fly all three of them in. So we'll have to have helicopter time, all that kind of stuff, but the same stuff as Drew's. They're 1,800-gallon boss tanks. We'll put, aprons over the top of them, keep them from having some damage. So this is a Dry Mountain one. You can see there's pretty big, the blue are elk. There's one moose kind of wandered through there, one time, but you can see the deer are pretty, at least collared deer are kind of separated on both ends of the mountain, but just having some more reliable water sources, I think, will help to spread them out a little bit. This is a similar guzzler on the Newfoundland Mountains. The only difference here is this apron's off to the side. We would build it over the top of it. Over the top of the tank. That does a few things. It keeps just sun damage off of them. That's one of the biggest long-term issues with these, is if we keep the sun off of them. And all these locations are gonna have quite a few bears. We've had bears. Once there's a fair amount of water in them, bears will come and just basically crush through the tank. Try to get into, I think they're wanting to swim around. They just need more water, I guess, so.
They can smell, the sport fish that are in there swimming around.
I was waiting for someone to say that. I wasn't gonna offer that.
Yeah, so that helps on a few sides if we build the apron all the way over the top of it. And this is the local one. You have Santaquin Peak, Loper Peak. This is just the WMA boundaries about right here. We have multiple other guzzlers on the WMA towards Highway 6. This would just be expanding that to the south under the forest a little bit, so.
It's crazy as high as it is.
There's that, if anybody's been on that mountain, I mean, even high elevation, there's not much water at all, like even spring wise, it's
Moose?
pretty dry.
Green's moose.
Yeah, Green's moose. And this is one of the regions kind of dumping spots for nuisance moose. We've tried to kind of expand moose population onto the Nebo, so that any water sources there would help moose as well.
And moose do use it. Let me tell you, we were trying to get one replaced. We had to have the helicopter chase the moose out of the way so we could get in there. It was like, not till I'm done drinking.
I'd say these are just some pictures of recent ones we've done. These are on the west side of the Stansberries this last fall. This is on Loper too.
Is this the same style that you?
Yeah, these are all the same exact style, metal purlins. This will be important for these on where they're high elevation, high snow loads. These are just some little angle iron feet we bolt onto the bottom to keep those delineators from pushing into the ground. So that's one thing we put on the higher elevations. Same thing. This will be the fence around it, keep livestock out, just a post and no fence.
Cool. Any questions on this?
Yeah, just one question. Do you just wait for them to fill naturally after you get them up there? Or do you fly them?
Yeah, I think we're gonna have high snow loads if we can get them in, and I think they won't have any problems.
So between the summer lane.
So, yeah.
Oh, no,
There we
I'm
go.
calling BS.
There we go.
High mountain.
These ones,
Forest grouse are not gonna use these.
there is grass. My one thought is the one on Dry Mountain's pretty rocky. I mean, it's higher elevation, but there's quite a few chucker there, so. The other two, I don't think, the other one further north on Dry Mountains, and it's kind of a ridge saddle. Squeaky type.
If I gave you 5, there's no way. And that's being generous. These are high mountain guzzlers.
Just because you don't want to walk up there and hunt them birds, Randy.
I spend half my season in forest
So you want to make a motion on this one, Randy?
I'll make a motion that I do 5% at the most. You got high mountain guys. I love Guzzler.
Okay.
And I'm a fan of them, but this is not impacting.
We'll get him elsewhere.
On these ones, so just a background too, this project kind of came about from Sportsman's Group, so we have, Dallas Safari Club reached out to me, SFW guys actually went up and did like some recon stuff and did some preliminary site stuff. They checked on our old guzzlers up there, so, there's a lot of interest from Sportsman's Groups to.
You've seen ducks up there too, right? Okay.
And I'll be honest.
But yeah, there's interest from Sportsman's Groups to help on this already, so.
Okay, so we have a motion from Randy. We adjusted the percentages,
Motion to
5%,
5% upland. I'll second that.
and you'll second that. Okay, a motion from Randy, a second from Kobe. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed, say no. Okay, motion carries. Thanks, Josie. Last project from Central Region WMA management budget. So in the past, we called these maintenance budgets, but really a lot of it's maintenance, but it really includes management. And it's how we manage properties.
Before Mark presents, can I say something about these really quickly?
Sure,
Okay,
I think.
so
Real quick.
I will be quick, but I feel like sometimes we all get super excited about the new and the sexy projects, right? The new, the fun, new that. And this is almost more important. This is the stuff that after we acquire the land, after we acquire the property, if we don't maintain it, we shouldn't own it. And so I just want to make sure folks know that when we talk about the WNA, we'll call it a management budget, we can call it a maintenance budget. This is, if we can't fund this, we probably shouldn't be funding new things. Because
I mean,
when you end up with properties that are run down or don't look like they should, and so I get it, this is probably not the fun thing to fund. And it's probably of the things we fund, one of the most important. And I just want to make that clear, like the group from wildlife perspective, maintaining the properties we own is more important than going out and doing new things or acquiring new things. Let's make sure these are up to spec and stuff first, and then we can do more.
So when the habitat account was created legislatively, it replaced a previous program that funded basically the management of WMAs. So part of the reason why these are included and embedded in the Habitat Council process is because that's what it's here for, and it replaced a previous program that took care of that function. And so that's why you'll see these in this first meeting. You'll see all of the management budgets for each region in this meeting, excluding waterfowl, which you'll see in the next meeting. So.
Well, and I like the change of name from maintenance to management, because one of the things we've challenged the habitat staff with in the past is that we want these lands to be an example, showcases to our federal partners to show them how they should be managing their lands as well. So keep that in mind when it comes to the cost of, what it takes to keep these not just maintained, but to make sure that they're in proper functioning condition.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
With
thank
that,
you.
go for it, Mark.
All right, well, I'm gonna show you some highlights of stuff we've done this year. And then it's kind of what types of things we do every year. It's our Christian Springs WMA east of Fountain Creek. Got burned in the Woodhull fire. That's why you don't see a lot of juniper trees on it. Anyway, we get property, a lot of elk on this property. They kind of hang out between private land and the city to the south. So like I said before, we have the most properties in any other region. I think we actually have 45 WMAs. There's a couple of WMAs that when I went through the lands folks, they told me I didn't know I had. It's like, oh no, I don't really know. 6 conservation easements, 5 sports and access points around Utah Lake, 110,000, almost 111,000 acres. So just to realize that what I'm asking for money wise isn't that much per acre of land. But anyway, that's kind of where that's our regional boundaries. You can see all those brown polygons are our WMAs. A lot of them, and it's tough when I've got 2 maintenance guys, 2 biologists, and myself try to sometimes don't even see one of those every WMA every year. Go next. So our Knox Suite program is majority of this budget is for personnel costs and for what we have to do to keep our noxious weeds under control. So you can see from here, we average about 14,000 gallons of chemical a year. And the good thing is, you said numbers kind of going down these last few years. That's a good thing because we're not spraying as much chemical as many on some of these properties as we used to. Hopefully we're getting kind of those weed infestations kind of controlled a little bit smaller so they don't take as long. Hopefully, we'll see. Might just be the year. Some years wetter at certain times, the weeds do crazy things. Anyway, that's a big part of our program. We have 2 weed trucks like that one there. We got 2 UTVs. That's our old 6-wheeler. Now we have a couple of Honda 1000s, and we got 2 ATVs. They spray usually from late April through July. Let's go ahead next. So our guzzler maintenance, that's a big part of our budget as well. We have over, I think it's closer to 250 some odd guzzlers. That's the ones we know of. I hope we got them all. Trying to figure out how to get them all on the list. So we, part of this budget, we turn on and off about 50 BLM guzzlers that have drinkers on them. We have to turn them on and off in spring and fall. We've rebuilt 10 guzzlers this year and installed 4 new ones. We monitor about 20 or so. We'll send a guy out to monitor, and the Whittaker Foundation provides the money for this person. It's just great. And go out and look at guzzlers we haven't seen for a while. Some of these are just up and game guzzlers that were put in 20 years ago. We need to make sure we're looking at those every certain amount of years to make sure they're operating properly. That's a big part of our workload. The next one then. So snow loads on guzzler aprons. Holy cow. 2022 was terrible. That's guzzler apron on the 10th of August WMA. And it's interesting what snow load can do to twist those metal purlins into pretzels. This is number 1 guzzler on temp. They're pulled the apron material there, the metal off, and we're trying to figure out how to rebuild that. And then this is what they've done, rebuilt it this fall. The one in the upper left, we'll have to fly in some new materials for that one. We've kind of fine-tuned. We've figured out what we need to do to keep these higher elevation guzzlers from being smashed. Make it a little bit smaller apron and more reinforcement on the purlins that go across there. And this is a commercial grade rain gutter that works a lot better than the other ones we've been using. Anyway, that gets really a whole lot of deer use. We got deer on this one on 10th of August, lots of deer, bear, cougar. So the one in the upper left, I was going to get a camera off it. I pulled the camera off. I heard somebody was hunting, said they scared a cougar out from one of the aprons, and I was like, wow, really? So I took the camera back and I look at the pictures, and there's a cougar crawling underneath the apron 24 hours before I got there. Exactly. It was like, holy cow. So when I went to this one here the next day, I was like, yeah. Because I was worried about that a little bit. Anyway, good. So some new ones we put in this year on the Stansberries, with some civil land for bighorn sheep, but maintaining those, keeping those in good condition is part of our workload. Next slide. This year so roads and fences, we got a crap ton of roads and lots of fences. Over 220 miles of fences on the WMAs. A lot of those are 40 years old or more, and we're always building new fences and repairing old ones. The road issue is more and more people use these properties. We're having to sign these roads and make sure they're on legal roads. And that's what that is on the White Hill WMA. Last year's spring runoff, this is in May, and we have that much water coming down Derryford Creek, cutting our road there and causing lots of road problems, a lot of maintenance things we're gonna have to take care of. Some of these roads, like on our starvation WMA, just destroyed some of our roads. And anyway, that's something we're going to do. Next one. Okay, fencing. So this is a Pine Canyon WMA by 12. We got a subdivision right next to us. just a 4-strand barbed wire fence between them and us, and people don't respect our fences very much. Kobe knows this property, he helped me put the green strip around it. Anyway, we finally got some money from the Atlantic Richfield that owns the property. They bought the materials and we put up had a contractor build this fence last year. So now we got a nice 8-foot, chain link fence around this property here to keep the people in their own yards. So,
They got holes in that yet?
that I know of, hopefully not.
It's like,
Yeah, hopefully.
Daniel, you gotta worry about Daniel.
We're
Going
gonna,
across the
so
street. and
we've
then-
got more housing, bigger housing lots going into the north. We've got to redo the fence there, and further north, there's housing going all around. We got to replace fences. Anyway, that's kind of a unique situation. Most of the time, it's just fences for livestock. Right, next one. Signs. If you come to my office, you're gonna see signs all over my floor, and I've got signs up in our storage shed. Always dealing with signs. Got to replace a bunch of our interest signs this year. I've got a $3,400 sign order at UCI right now for signs I need made. Some of them are these. These are almost about $280 for a sign that size. So something got to deal with them. People love to shoot our signs. I don't know why it is, but we do a lot of signs and replace a lot of signs. So it's, anyway, go to the next one. Okay, scalping seed we talked about. We've done a lot on our WMA, Santaquin, Levan, Waldsburg, and Timpanogos. Next slide. You've already seen these, so these are the plants I told them about. They're about $1.50 a piece, the PL50s, 9-month-old seedling. That's what we determined is the best size for the cost. Hopefully we'll get as good of a slide. Next slide. We do some beaver work, with our WMAs. We trap nuisance beavers and release them in places we want them. And this is a place on our Dairy Fork WMA. We've got an inside stream. We built beavers here earlier in the summer. You see how it sizes is. This last year with the 3 runoff was cut, majorly cut. So we got those BDAs. We released about 5 beavers, and they were still in there doing their job as of December 4th when I went up there. So hopefully we get some work done for free. Anyway, next one. So that's kind of the budget. It seems like a lot of money. It wasn't that much. We had to boost that quite a bit the last couple of years because of the cost of labor we had to increase. We can't get people to work for us for $10 an hour anymore. Just inflation of everything. So anyway, that's kind of how it's broken out.
I'll make the observation, you only went up 9,000 from last year. I think that's great.
And one of the things the restoration tech there, we had to add, that's something we didn't have last year. So that's one of the additions. Otherwise, I could put a lot more money here and spend it on fencing and signs if I could. Yeah. But anyway, that's hopefully enough to do what we need to do.
So, to your comment, Randy, all of our managers have done a great job. They don't ask for typically, really more than what they need. And they don't try to blow all of the budget on, the management activities. Ask for slush stuff, so.
Curiosity, just because it made me think of it with the pictures you had up there. Is there any bleed over, and this isn't a gotcha or anything. Is there bleed over from management or maintenance money to projects?
Oh, yes. Yeah, a bunch of those projects, like I did earlier, I just showed you that the stuff that's going on that are WMA. So I'm not paying for those out of WMA maintenance, but that's work we're doing on the WMA.
Okay.
So yeah, there's bleed over. So I can't afford $30,000 project on my WMA maintenance budget. So I do projects and get those funded separately.
Okay, any questions on this one?
I think it should all be baked in.
75% already.
I'm just kidding. I'm totally good with it. Just,
I'm actually good with that. I mean, Alex.
I'm good with it. Just
Standard.
yeah.
And most of it is big game property. Yeah, so, yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, do we have a motion on this one? All right, we have a motion from Steve and a second from Blake. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. All right, motion carries. It's Mark. Okay, we're 11:43. We got that's all we got here. So our lunch is here already, so we could jump off to that.
You okay if we move your stuff to right after lunch?
Sure.
And I figured you guys were probably staying for that anyway, regardless, right?
So let's do that. Let's, we're kind of at a transition point to the next region's project. So we're gonna take our lunch break now and let's see. So we'll plan to start up again at 12:45 on our Southeast region projects. So we're officially on break for lunch. So what?
Yeah, so start at this end and just come back around and we can come back in this door over here.
Yeah.
They're on this one.